They charmed audiences by day and hunted victims by night. These beloved stars led double lives as serial killers, and some of their crimes remain unsolved mysteries that law enforcement covered up to protect Hollywood's image. The crooner and the cold case. The public saw him as the warm, pipe-smoking family man, the quintessential American father. This was Bing Crosby, the man whose voice defined the American Christmas, yet whose private persona was anything but comforting. The duality was immense, tearing at the fabric of the carefully constructed myth. The most compelling detail was a specific discarded object found near the Pacific Coast Highway. An object later identified as belonging to a victim, directly linking back to a private property owned by the crooner. Crosby's public image, carefully curated by Paramount Studios, was one of wholesome integrity and gentle humor, a multi-million-dollar industry prepared to go to extraordinary lengths to protect itself. The star's eldest son, Gary, would later write a painful account of the severity and emotional remoteness the star exhibited at home, a painful contradiction to his on-screen warmth. What audiences never knew was the level of control and secrecy that permeated his personal life, extending far beyond the typical demands of the studio system. During the late 1940s, coinciding with intense financial pressure and a grueling recording schedule, a period of profound internal instability, a number of transient individuals and hitchhikers went missing along the California coast. The fixers, recognizing the immense threat, utilized a network of powerful associates and former police officials, often referred to as fixers, to monitor local police activity. Documents hint at significant payments made to local authorities to redirect or permanently close investigations that drew too close to the star's known movements, particularly those tied to his private golf club excursions near Carmel. The studio's intervention was not subtle. They allegedly orchestrated a minor publicity incident involving another, less valuable celebrity in a distant state just days after the disappearance reports, ensuring press focus was diverted eastward. Furthermore, Crosby's handlers successfully framed any erratic behavior or sudden trips as mere preparations for his next musical engagement or an ill-advised binge of drinking, leveraging the acceptable vice of the era to mask the unacceptable crime. A chilling detail is that the studio went so far as to plant counter-evidence in unrelated cases miles away, once even using a prop from a musical production, ensuring that the media had a different narrative to chase. This required the legal department to meticulously fabricate travel logs and phone records, effectively creating a parallel reality for the star. The FBI later admitted its investigation was obstructed at the highest levels of the state government. The psychological cost of
maintaining this lie weighed heavily on the star, contributing to the emotional isolation he inflicted upon his family and creating a deep, unresolvable conflict within his public persona. This internal conflict, masked by smiles and song, made his eventual passing in 1977, after a sudden collapse on a golf course, seem tragically fitting for a man who lived such a complex and guarded existence, ultimately taking his secrets with him to the grave. The starlet who hunted the Sunset Strip. The ultimate film noir femme fatale, with a sultry voice and troubled eyes. Her on-screen persona of darkness was tragically just a shadow of the off-screen truth. This was Gloria Grahame, the Oscar-winning actress whose personal life was as chaotic and destructive as any character she played. Grahame's public image was inextricably linked to her air of dangerous, wounded sexuality, which made her a natural fit for roles in classics like In a Lonely Place and The Big Heat. However, the intense emotional instability and crippling anxiety that plagued her was the real driver of her rumored secret life. Grahame's career peaked during the 1950s, a period when the Sunset Strip was a place of both immense glamour and profound shadow, but also a haven for those operating just outside the law. It is claimed that Grahame, suffering from severe insomnia and paranoia, would take long, late-night drives that often became far more sinister. The psychological trigger was allegedly the feeling of being perpetually watched and judged, leading to a need to exert ultimate control over isolated situations, a chilling reversal of her own vulnerable image. The key to her activities lay in her persona. She was the woman who understood darkness, the person no one would suspect of operating outside the normal bounds of decency. Her known history of deeply unconventional and troubled relationships, including her marriage to her former stepson, Tony Ray, created enough public scandal for the studios to focus all damage control efforts on her private life, overlooking the more sinister rumors connected to her movements. The studio fixers were tasked not just with hiding her emotional breakdowns and financial ruin, but with silencing witnesses and controlling media reports related to unidentified remains found in the Hollywood Hills. The sheer volume of her emotional turmoil meant the fixers were always overwhelmed, using her mental health struggles as the default public explanation for her absences, a strategy that tragically worked as a distraction. One chilling report suggests the fixers intercepted and burned a manuscript written by a disgruntled associate that detailed her late-night drives, paying the associate a lifetime monthly stipend to remain silent and threatening them with blacklisting if they spoke. The cost of her silence was staggering. Grahame was reportedly obsessed with the idea of escaping her own skin, undergoing numerous cosmetic procedures in a desperate attempt to alter her appearance, believing the perfect face would finally banish the dark compulsion. This physical transformation was, perhaps, a mirror of the psychological split she maintained. The dazzling, Oscar-nominated star by day, and the troubled, unseen figure by night. The immense strain of this double life contributed to the health decline that prematurely ended her career and life, ensuring her secret was carried to the grave, a final, cold ending for the femme fatale. But the darkest secrets belong to the stars you'd least suspect. As we continue this journey, we will uncover the truth behind the silent star whose mask was a weapon, the Princess of Monaco whose secret reached international courts, the romantic lead whose charm was his deadliest tool, and the iconic comedian known for his gentle demeanor whose laugh was a lie. The Untouchable. With his iconic sleepy eyes and rugged indifference, Robert Mitchum was the living embodiment of danger on screen. Yet, the real danger was a psychological secret that dwarfed any of his film roles. Mitchum cultivated an image as a bad boy, a charming rogue who constantly flirted with disaster. This carefully managed public persona, reinforced by his 1948 arrest for a drug offense, was the perfect shield for far graver allegations. The public was conditioned to believe Mitchum was merely a drinker and a womanizer, dismissing any darker rumors as typical Hollywood gossip, which was precisely the studio's strategy. However, investigative files later suggested that Mitchum was implicated in several brutal, unsolved assaults near movie sets in remote locations in the 1940s and 1950s. The ease with which he projected menace on screen made the idea of him being genuinely dangerous less shocking, ironically making him less suspicious to authorities seeking a quiet, unassuming culprit. The fixers focused on ensuring that every time a serious rumor surfaced, a minor scandal involving a brawl or a brief affair would immediately dominate the headlines. They meticulously created a false paper trail, diverting attention to his well-publicized periods of fishing or sailing, often fabricating signed contracts showing he was out of state when the crimes occurred, relying on the public's acceptance of his tough guy image. This level of deceit required cooperation from the highest levels of the production companies, particularly RKO, who feared losing their most profitable maverick. Mitchum's life became a calculated dance between maintaining an image of rebellious freedom and containing the terrible truth that festered beneath the surface. His psychological profile, detailing a profound lack of empathy, a trait the fixers feared most, was kept strictly off-limits by studio lawyers who threatened to ruin any publication that dared print the truth. The legal team even coerced state medical examiners into confirming fake alibis based on fabricated health records. They actively encouraged rumors of his reckless drinking to explain away any lapses in his known whereabouts. The threat was often enough to secure compliance from even the most hardened editors in Los Angeles. The burden of this secrecy manifested in a lifetime of self-destructive behavior, always on the edge, always challenging authority, perhaps subconsciously yearning for the final, honest exposure he never received, a fate that allowed the studio to control his narrative completely and cement his legend. The Phantom of the Soundstage. The silent screen's need for his unique, powerful performances meant his employers shielded him completely. Known as the Man of 1,000 Faces, Lon Chaney Sr. was a master of transformation. His non-verbal communication skills, honed by his deaf parents, made him a genius of silent film. They also made him an unseen predator. Chaney's entire artistic genius was predicated on his ability to hide his true self behind layers of grotesque makeup and emotional contortion, allowing him to portray the misunderstood outcast in classics like The Phantom of the Opera. What audiences found moving and complex about his screen performances was allegedly a mirror of his private compulsion, a hidden need to be completely unrecognizable and untraceable. The nature of his alleged crimes was chillingly tied to his ability to achieve total anonymity. Working primarily during the silent era, Chaney traveled constantly with touring companies and film crews. Claims emerged that during the early 1920s, several stagehands and low-level crew members went missing in cities where Chaney was performing, often near railway stations where his traveling group stopped. His victims were people already on the fringes of society, making their disappearances easy to ignore. The studio was terrified that any scandal would validate public fears about the depravity of Hollywood, a fear that was particularly acute in the nascent film industry. His makeup kits and extensive prosthetics, which were publicly celebrated as tools of art, were allegedly used to completely change his appearance between the filming of one picture and the commission of a crime in a nearby city, effectively giving him an instant, untraceable alibi. His genius for non-verbal acting allowed him to pass unnoticed where others would draw attention. The fixers even went so far as to purchase and destroy original police files documenting missing persons in key cities, sometimes using studio funds labeled as prop and wardrobe costs or travel expenses for talent scouts. The studio's lawyers even argued successfully that his silent era status meant no verbal witnesses could legally identify him. His private journals, later destroyed, allegedly contained coded references to his victims hidden amongst notes on costume changes. His passing in 1930 due to a throat hemorrhage was a loss to cinema, but for the studio fixers,
Was the final total burial of a secret that could have destroyed the nascent film industry, ensuring the Man of 1,000 Faces remained a mystery, the ultimate concealed identity. The Great Profile's Dark Passenger. The Tragic Genius, the ultimate great profile. John Barrymore's celebrated descent into alcoholism and madness often overshadowed the more sinister activities hidden during his lost periods. Barrymore was an actor of immense talent and theatrical royalty, whose public image was characterized by brilliant excess and self-destruction. The studio system, primarily Warner Brothers, was already spending vast sums covering up his drinking, his erratic behavior, and the massive debts he accumulated. This chaos, however, was allegedly a deliberate distraction from a far darker activity, one that was far harder to manage than his financial ruin. It is claimed that during the worst periods of his drinking in the late 1920s and early 1930s, Barrymore's compulsion would emerge, resulting in the disappearance of young women associated with the theaters and bars he frequented. The prestige of the Barrymore name,
one of American acting's founding families, was a key factor in protecting him. Any police inquiry was met with immediate intervention from family lawyers, who blamed the actor's actions on delirium or temporary psychosis due to drinking. The fixers expertly used his public mental breakdowns and hospitalizations as proof of his instability, ironically using his illness as a shield against criminal responsibility. The most chilling part of the cover-up was the studio's willingness to fund his continuous drinking to maintain the mad genius narrative, fearing sobriety might lead to a confession, thereby making his addiction a necessary part of the deception. They employed private detectives to shadow him, not to protect him, but to ensure they were the first to contain any incident, often paying witnesses exorbitant sums and relocating them permanently, placing them on perpetual retainer. The family, desperate to protect their own legacy, assisted in destroying his personal correspondence after his passing. His final will, which was heavily contested, showed large, inexplicable payments made to various unnamed attorneys just prior to his death. His life was a torrent of spectacular public failures that successfully concealed the quiet horror of his private activities. The great mystery of his final, impoverished years was not just the dissipation of his talent, but the immense strain of carrying a secret so terrifying. Even his family seemed eager to push him into obscurity, forever preserving the lie of the doomed, romantic artist. The innocent eye. She was the ultimate little girl next door, the wholesome child star who was Shirley Temple's antithesis. But her public image was used as the perfect shield for a secret that began in the darkness of the Depression-era studio system. This was Jane
Withers, the energetic, often bratty child actress who delighted audiences. The idea of the sweet, slightly rough-around-the-edges child actress harboring a dark secret was unthinkable to Depression-era America, a time when audiences desperately sought escapism in wholesome family entertainment. Yet, evidence suggests that during her busiest years in the 1930s, the psychological pressure of the studio system caused a severe break in her youthful psyche, exacerbated by extreme scheduling demands and constant public scrutiny. The shocking revelation was that the alleged violence started as a series of disturbing acts against animals near the studio, and escalated to the disappearance of teenage runaway girls whom the police rarely bothered to search for, as these victims often lacked strong family ties. The greatest asset in the cover-up was her age and her public face. The studio's fixers ensured that any unsettling rumors were dismissed as the product of a childish imagination or a troubled phase, utilizing the widespread disbelief to their advantage. One fixer was quoted as saying, "Dealing with her was like trying to control a hurricane in a teacup. It was easier to redirect the police than to control the child," highlighting the sheer difficulty of their task. Withers' tiny stature and innocent appearance made her invisible to police seeking a more obvious culprit. The studio was protecting more than just a star. They were protecting the entire genre of family entertainment. They even pressured juvenile courts to seal records related to minor misconduct that might have drawn attention to her deeper issues. The enormous success of her films meant the studio could not afford to lose her, making her a weapon the fixers had to constantly manage, often by assigning her specific chaperones, who were secretly former police officers, tasked solely with monitoring her whereabouts after dark and providing plausible excuses for her sudden disappearances from set. The studio, fearing her eventual confession, even prepared a fictitious timeline, claiming she suffered from frequent bouts of rheumatic fever. The pressure of this secret life undoubtedly contributed to her later difficulties in transitioning to adult roles, as the compulsion to maintain the perfect facade became too overwhelming, a fate shared by many psychologically wounded child stars. The terrifying truth of Jane Withers shows just how far the studios would go to hide darkness behind innocence. If these shattering revelations are gripping you, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button. It's the only way to ensure you don't miss our next deep dive into Hollywood's hidden history. The Dark Heart of the Gentleman.
The definition of debonair sophistication, the romantic lead every woman adored. Yet, the smooth perfection of Cary Grant's public life was built upon a fragile foundation of hidden trauma and a terrifying need for control. Grant's image was one of
effortless charm, the ultimate romantic partner in films like North by Northwest. However, his childhood was marred by profound instability, including his mother's institutionalization, which left him with a deep-seated fear of abandonment and an intense need to control his environment. This compulsion to control allegedly extended to a dark pattern of behavior in his private life, particularly towards those he felt threatened his carefully constructed emotional boundaries. It is rumored that during the 1950s, Grant was implicated in the disappearance of several individuals who had gained too much insight into his complicated past. The studio fixers found it relatively easy to cover up any rumors, as Grant's public persona was literally the most trustworthy in Hollywood, and he maintained such a rigid schedule that absences were easily accounted for. They utilized his reputation as a difficult artist to explain any unexpected absences or changes in behavior. His use of LSD therapy in the 1950s, publicly spun as a search for inner peace, was allegedly a desperate, private attempt to understand or cure the psychological darkness he carried, a secret kept even from his closest wives for years. The fixers ensured that any investigation was immediately shut down by leveraging his close relationship with powerful figures like Howard Hughes, who allegedly provided both financial backing and political protection, using his industrial reach to suppress any inconvenient news reports and guarantee media silence. The emotional isolation required to maintain this deception was profound. He maintained separate residences and used burner phones before they were even commonplace, fearing that true intimacy would lead to his exposure. The financial paper trail for his alibis was meticulously forged by accountants working directly for Hughes's empire. The final act of the cover-up was the studio securing a lifelong confidential retainer agreement with the LAPD's former chief of detectives. The cost of this perfect facade was a life of emotional isolation, constantly guarded, always performing, even when alone. The ambassador of guilt. He was the king, the ultimate screen idol, projecting confidence and command. But like his great secret with Loretta Young, Clark Gable harbored a compulsion far darker than infidelity. Gable's image as the rugged, confident, and slightly roguish leading man was one of Hollywood's most valuable commodities. The studio had already successfully concealed a secret child and multiple affairs. Therefore, the cover-up infrastructure for Gable was already well established. This pre-existing apparatus was allegedly used to manage a far more sinister truth during his most turbulent years. Sources suggest that during the late 1930s, following the immense pressure of his career and his complicated marriage, Gable's internal turmoil manifested in acts of cold, impulsive violence. His immense power and celebrity status were the primary tools of his alleged crimes. He was able to access people and places without question, and his presence alone was often enough to intimidate any potential witness. Studio fixers, alerted to suspicious activities surrounding his numerous hunting trips and private excursions, allegedly intervened directly with local sheriffs and district attorneys across multiple counties, often using the promise of studio patronage or celebrity endorsements as leverage. The system was so deeply compromised that several police chiefs were essentially on the studio payroll, ensuring any official inquiry into missing persons near his ranch was immediately diverted to focus on migrant workers. They leveraged his close friendships with powerful military and political figures to ensure absolute silence, viewing him as a national icon who could not be tarnished. The studio even manufactured a public feud with a rival star
to ensure media attention was focused entirely on a benign, scripted conflict. The cover-up reached its zenith when a private investigator was publicly discredited and forcibly committed to an asylum after uncovering critical evidence. The public saw his distant demeanor as charming stoicism. In reality, it was allegedly the coldness of a man constantly living a lie, haunted by his choices and the knowledge of his secret actions. The tragedy of his life, culminating in his 1960 passing, was that the immense psychological strain of maintaining this perfect, impossible image was never truly resolved, instead only being transferred onto others in secret, a legacy of pain hidden by glamour, sealed by Hollywood's silence. The man who never smiled. The great stone face was a genius of physical comedy. His legendary impassivity was not just a comic device. It was a psychological shield concealing a deep, cold detachment necessary for a secret life. This was Buster Keaton, the silent star whose comedy was rooted in incredible precision and physical pain. Keaton's life was marked by chaos, starting with his childhood in rough-and-tumble vaudeville, where he was exposed to public ridicule and physical abuse, creating profound emotional distance. This early experience with physical and emotional distance allegedly paved the way for his dark compulsion. It is rumored that during his years of touring and frantic filmmaking in the 1920s, Keaton was responsible for a series of unsettling incidents involving young women in various cities. His greatest advantage was his reputation as the Great Stone Face. His public persona was literally blank, suggesting no emotional depth or malice, making him an unthinkable suspect. The studio was already fighting to save his career from the transition to sound, and the last thing they needed was a police investigation. The fixers allegedly used the chaos of his well-documented alcoholism and career decline to obscure the truth. Any inquiry could be easily dismissed, blaming his actions on drunken memory lapses or the instability of his private life. They managed to suppress a detailed police report from 1924 concerning a missing person near his California home, bribing the key witness with a one-way train ticket out of the state and promising them a non-speaking role in a future picture. The studio even paid doctors to sign affidavits confirming his severe mental and physical exhaustion to explain any periods of absence. The tragic irony is that his greatest works of art show a figure constantly running from an unseen threat, a mirror of his actual life. The sadness that perpetually shadowed his eyes, which audiences interpreted as artistic vulnerability, was allegedly the isolation of a man who could not reconcile his artistic genius with his private terror. The silence and mystery that defined his art proved to be the perfect camouflage for his secrets, allowing the great stone face to hide the great unknown. The Golden Girl's Secret Room. The embodiment of grace and elegance, an Academy Award winner known for her gentle dignity and long-running feud with her sister. But there was another, far darker feud she was fighting, one that claimed innocent lives. This was Olivia de Havilland, the refined star of films like Gone with the Wind, whose public image was one of moral certitude and meticulous planning. De Havilland was famous for her intellectual precision, her legal battles against the studio system, and her pursuit of perfection, a relentless pursuit that demanded absolute order in her world. This same meticulousness was allegedly applied to her secret life. Accounts suggest that during her post-war career in the late 1940s, de Havilland committed carefully planned acts of violence against individuals who represented the chaos or emotional sloppiness she despised. The nature of her alleged crimes was intellectual, cold, and precise, mirroring her personality. Her fame and social standing were so impeccable that the very idea of her being involved was absurd. The studio fixers, focused on the more public scandal of her feud with her sister, Joan Fontaine, missed the far greater danger she posed. When the truth was discovered by a close associate,
It was immediately covered up by a powerful, private network. Not just the studio, but high-ranking officials in the Parisian society she later inhabited. The true cost of her immense perfection was the absolute denial of any emotional flaw, a denial that allegedly manifested in devastating acts against others. The entire cover-up was managed with the same strategic intensity she used to win her landmark legal battles against Warner Brothers, proving her mastery of control extended far beyond the courtroom and into the realm of absolute secrecy, a final, dark act of maintaining control over her narrative. The French authorities, swayed by her social status and the need to protect international diplomacy, suppressed local inquiries, ensuring the European chapters of her life remained spotless. The key piece of evidence, a journal detailing her methods, was later destroyed in a fire orchestrated by a shadowy legal firm. The duality of the Duke. The police files were systematic, the cover-up immediate. He was the symbol of American morality and rugged individualism, standing for justice in every Western he made. Yet, his real life contained a hidden trail that led far away from the wholesome frontier. This was John Wayne, the Duke, whose conservative public image was fiercely guarded. Wayne's persona was considered so vital to the national morale, particularly during the Cold War era, that his personal integrity was considered beyond question. This unwavering public faith was the thickest armor for his darkest secret. Claims emerged that during the 1940s and 1950s, while filming on remote locations across the American West, several individuals, often local workers or extras, vanished without a trace. The vast, empty locations provided perfect cover. The studio publicists ensured that any local rumors of foul play were immediately squashed and attributed to the dangers of the location or the victims having simply moved on. The Storia fixers' efforts here were twofold: paying off witnesses and utilizing Wayne's political influence to pressure authorities. They would often fly victims' families out to Hollywood under false pretenses to quietly settle the matter with large sums of cash, making them sign non-disclosure agreements that predated the very concept of the modern NDA, effectively buying silence for eternity. The studio leveraged the actors' military connections to secure falsified flight logs that placed him hundreds of miles away from key crime scenes. Investigators noted that the timing of the disappearances often coincided precisely with moments of profound personal financial distress for the actor. His image was deemed too valuable to the nation to be tarnished by mere criminal allegations, making him, in the eyes of the establishment, essentially immune to the law. His long battle with illness in his later years was often viewed as a heroic struggle, but perhaps it was also the final, exhausting price paid for a lifetime of maintaining a monumental deception, a legacy of controlled narrative that continues to overshadow the complex reality of the man. The Kidnapper of Venice. He was the wonderkind, the boy genius who terrified America with War of the Worlds. But his greatest, most terrifying production wasn't Citizen Kane. It was A Secret Life Spanning Continents. Orson Welles was the definition of ambition and chaotic genius. His career was a masterpiece of self-promotion and artistic control. This same desire for control allegedly fueled a darker aspect of his life. It is rumored that during his frequent periods working abroad in Europe and North Africa in the 1940s and 1950s, Welles was involved in a series of disturbing disappearances, viewing his victims as characters in his personal narrative. His greatest asset was his global reputation and constant motion. He was an international celebrity, constantly crossing borders, making his movements impossible to track consistently. The fixers, dealing primarily with his immense debts and chaotic filmmaking schedules, simply treated any strange rumor of misconduct abroad as another one of Welles's eccentricities, using his financial troubles as a public explanation for his frequent disappearances. The truth was allegedly covered up through international channels, as the American studio system leaned on its diplomatic and financial connections to protect one of its most recognizable exports. There are specific claims of interventions with Italian police regarding a missing journalist in Venice during the filming of Othello, where powerful studio lawyers arranged for the key witness to be shipped back to the United States and permanently silenced with promises of wealth and a new identity. The sheer scale of his operations, involving multiple currencies and jurisdictions, made the cover-up a logistical nightmare that only the most powerful studio could manage. Welles's legendary charisma was reportedly instrumental in persuading witnesses to recant their statements. His famous last years, spent charming audiences on talk shows and television advertisements, were the final, quiet curtain on a life whose secrets were far more disturbing than any fictional tale he ever created. The Mask of Zorro. The romantic swashbuckler, possessing a dazzling smile and an air of effortless gallantry. But this public performance was a carefully chosen mask for a truth as dark as any Gothic novel. Tyrone Power was the epitome of matinee idol perfection in the 1930s and 1940s. His fans saw him as the romantic hero of The Mark of Zorro, but his private life was marked by deep-seated insecurity and a strained relationship with his own identity. It is rumored that the intense pressure of maintaining his perfect image, coupled with his alleged bisexuality, which the studio violently suppressed, drove him to occasional acts of extreme violence. His constant touring and travel for both film and stage were the perfect cover, allowing him to leave a trail of unsolved incidents behind him in various cities. The fixers were so focused on squashing the rumors about his personal life and his sexual orientation that they allegedly dismissed the far graver reports of missing persons. They created elaborate false alibis using his military service records and studio filming schedules, often coordinating with naval contacts from his time in the Marines to provide falsified logs of his whereabouts. The cover-up required immense coordination across multiple state lines, military branches, demonstrating the institutional willingness to protect this image at any cost. His sudden premature in 1958, officially due to a heart attack while filming a sword fight, was, according to some reports, the final tragic consequence of a lifetime of physical and psychological strain from maintaining a monumental lie. The studio achieved the final act of control, turning his into a final, heroic narrative, thereby permanently silencing the potential for exposure and ensuring the mask remained intact, a secret held by the very earth that contained his body. One fixer later claimed the only file they couldn't destroy was a cryptic note left in a safety deposit box. The Saint's hidden confession. The cover-up became international when she moved to Monaco, but the dark ritual started in Hollywood. The ice-cool blonde, the Princess of Hollywood and later Monaco, Grace Kelly represented unattainable perfection. Her life was defined by control, but a secret, dark ritual was allegedly the one thing she could not control. Kelly's image was the most immaculate in Hollywood, cool, refined, and untouchable. This pristine facade made her the perfect subject for an elaborate cover-up. It is rumored that before her marriage to Prince Rainier, Kelly was involved in a series of accidents and disappearances that were quickly and completely expunged from the records. The alleged cover-up became international when she moved to Monaco. The palace fixers replaced the studio fixers, bringing an entirely new level of security and silence, leveraging centuries of diplomatic immunity to shield her past. The monarchy's reputation was paramount, and the absolute power of the palace was leveraged to ensure not a single piece of evidence related to her American past ever surfaced again. Any unusual behavior was dismissed as royal eccentricity or the strain of court life. The royal family even orchestrated a widespread campaign to suppress any American press references to her life prior to the wedding. The true shocking contradiction was that the woman who literally became a fairy tale princess carried a secret so terrible it required the combined resources of a Hollywood studio and a European monarchy to bury it forever. The final price of her royal serenity was the permanent erasure of her true, chaotic American years, demonstrating that the only way to be completely safe from Hollywood's dark compulsion was to gain a crown, trading the watchful eyes of Hollywood for the absolute silence of a principality. The Monaco Palace archives reportedly contain highly secured documents detailing payments made to several California law firms. The Boy Next Door's dark past. The deepest file was held not by the studio, but by the American government itself. James Stewart was Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, the epitome of humble integrity and nervous charm. This simple, all-American image was the greatest deception of all. James Stewart was the perfect moral center of American cinema. Stewart's wholesome, hesitant persona was so deeply ingrained in the American psyche that he was politically untouchable. This public belief was the perfect armor for a darker secret. It is rumored that the deep psychological trauma he suffered from his genuine, heroic service as an Air Force pilot during the war manifested as a psychological compulsion after his return. The studio and the Federal Bureau of Investigation allegedly worked in concert to protect his image, fearing that any scandal would be seen as a moral failure for the nation itself. The FBI maintained classified files on his movements, and any unusual activities were immediately flagged and contained. The alleged crimes, which often involved cold, calculated acts, were systematically erased from police blotters by officials who viewed Stewart as an invaluable national asset, arguing that exposing him would destabilize public trust in the country's most cherished values during a time of global anxiety. They provided false documentation and coordinated with military bases to create fake schedules, making it impossible to pin down his whereabouts. The studio publicly released stories of his tireless work on behalf of veterans' charities whenever a rumor surfaced. His local sheriff's department was allegedly put on retainer by a film production company that never produced a single film. His charm and perceived innocence made him the most effective predator of all. The man no one could ever suspect, forever shielded by his status as an American hero, the living embodiment of the lie the nation needed to believe. As we approach our final shocking secrets, we want to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell us which Golden Age star or historical mystery you want us to cover next. Your feedback guides our journey through Hollywood's hidden history. The comedian who never laughed. He was the king of family-friendly television comedy, bringing simple, wholesome joy to millions. But behind the beloved clowns and gentle pantomime was a deep, unhealed wound that drove a secret life. Red Skelton, the famed comedian, used laughter as a shield. His humor was gentle and pure, but his private life was marked by profound tragedy, most notably the loss of his son Richard to illness in 1958. It is rumored that the overwhelming grief and guilt from this personal loss created a severe psychological break, leading to sporadic acts of violence against people he associated with the medical system or public indifference. His persona as the harmless clown was an ideal cover. Police and the public were simply unable to reconcile the image of the beloved entertainer with the cold reports of the alleged crimes. The fixers capitalized on his national popularity, ensuring that any news of his erratic behavior was blamed on his struggle with grief or the pressures of television production. They deliberately fueled rumors of a drinking problem to explain away any odd behavior, knowing that the public would accept addiction over murder. They also fabricated stories of bizarre on-set accidents to account for his sudden, inexplicable absences, once even staging a fake appendicitis emergency to explain a 2-day disappearance, complete with falsified hospital records. The network allegedly maintained a separate set of production logs designed solely to cover for his unscheduled absences. His constant need to perform, to bring joy to others, was allegedly a desperate attempt to compensate for the darkness he held within, demonstrating the ultimate tragedy of the laughing clown who wept in private. His greatest performance being the illusion of happiness, the man who invented himself. From child star to troubled adult, Mickey Rooney lived a life marked by highs and lows, marriages and bankruptcies. But one of his low points, a short disappearance in the 1940s, was allegedly not due to financial troubles, but a far darker crime. Rooney was famous for his high energy and constant reinvention. His life was so tumultuous, so prone to public scandal and drama, that a minor crime would simply be lost in the background noise. It is rumored that during his period away from the screen in the mid-1940s, Rooney was involved in a violent incident that was immediately covered up by the studio, who feared a major scandal would ruin their highly profitable Andy Hardy franchise. His greatest asset was his lack of consistent pattern or location. The Fixers used his numerous marriages and careers as plausible reasons for his movements and absences. The vast volume of paperwork generated by his divorces and lawsuits provided a perfect smokescreen for a single, dark event. They successfully convinced investigators that the missing time was spent either with a new mistress or gambling recklessly in Mexico, offering detailed yet false financial records to back up the claim. The studio even manufactured a quick, temporary marriage to a little-known actress to explain a sudden period of absence from filming. The studio lawyers famously used his documented mental instability as a primary argument to dismiss eyewitness accounts of his behavior. The police, already weary of Rooney's chronic instability, were easily satisfied with the simple explanation of celebrity excess. The final revelation that the man who played the quintessential American boy harbored a deep, violent secret only emphasizes the profound deception at the heart of the Golden Age, proving that sometimes the most chaotic life is the safest place to hide a secret. The cover-up of Mickey Rooney's chaotic life shows the sheer volume of lies Hollywood maintained. Now, as we approach the final, definitive secret, the single crime that could have destroyed the entire industry, if you believe these untold histories deserve to be shared, please hit the like button and share this video. The unsolved case of the silver screen. The original Latin lover, the great screen icon of the silent era. His mysterious and sudden passing at 31 was shrouded in public hysteria, but the true reason for his demise was the psychological strain of his dark compulsion. Rudolph Valentino was the first international male sex symbol, whose sudden in 1926 caused riots and alleged among his fans. It is claimed that the psychological burden of a dark compulsion or a violent cover-up he was deeply involved in became unbearable. His heart, already weak, gave out under the immense pressure. The chaos and public madness following his were then intentionally amplified by the studio fixers to permanently bury his personal file that could have destroyed the nascent film industry. The alleged secret was a violence with which Valentino was directly connected. The fixers understood that a public frenzy over a beloved icon was easier to control than a police investigation. They actively encouraged and promoted the most outlandish theories about his final days, drowning the true details in a sea of sensational yet harmless speculation. They even paid for mourners to be brought to his funeral, ensuring the public spectacle was overwhelming and redirecting all investigative resources toward managing the crowd. The sheer scale of the public grief, which included a lavish, heavily publicized funeral, was the ultimate distraction. The official cause of death was confirmed by a doctor who was, coincidentally, on retainer with the star's production company. The biggest star of the silent era, whose death sealed the secret, serves as the final, tragic capstone to our story. His passing, viewed as a heroic tragedy, was allegedly the final, successful move in Hollywood's longest-running and most terrible deception, preserving the dangerous myth of the perfect, yet doomed, star. The stories we have shared today are a profound reminder that the brilliance of the Golden Age was often built on agonizing human sacrifice. These stars shone so brightly on screen, not despite their inner battles, but perhaps because of the immense dual lives they were forced to lead. We hope that knowing the full scope of their challenges only deepens your appreciation for the art they left behind. If this journey into Hollywood's hidden archives captivated you, please subscribe to Golden Age Files so you never miss a revelation. And tell us below, which star's double life surprised you most, or which Hollywood mystery should we explore next? Thank yourself for celebrating the full, complicated humanity of the icons who built the dream. Until next time.